consider this example once again, this black box example. So I have a system sitting here, and I have also some inputs and one output. You can hardly see it. Okay, you can now see it. One output. Now in this case, there are certain terms that we use often. One terminology is like this. So let's take this thing. So all these inputs may be either categorical, taking only say some finitely many values, or they could be continuous. And this output will be calling it as response, and we have the random error. Now a categorical input, something like gender or age group or smoking habit, they are generally called factors. These are called factors. And if I consider a continuous input, that is generally called a covariate. There may be one or more covariate input, one or more factor input. So we have got factors, we have got covariates, and the response we will always assume to be continuous, and we will also assume that the random error is always continuous. Now it is possible to consider cases where the response or the random variable, these are also categorical, but we shall not discuss them in the first half of the course. So for a linear model, we will consider either categorical inputs, factors, or continuous inputs, or maybe both, but the output will always be continuous, and so will be the random error. If we allow the response also to be categorical discrete, that will be what is called a generalized linear model. There are a few terminology that are generally used connected with the world of linear models, depending on how many factors you have and how many covariates you have. These are not terribly important things to know, but helps. For example, if in your black box setup you have only factors, then you call it an ANOVA model. ANOVA is an abbreviation for analysis of variance. We'll take a closer look at what is meant by analysis of variance, but for the time being, just remember that if I have a black box setup where I have only covariates, then only factors, no covariates, that is only categorical inputs, then I will call that an ANOVA setup. For example, if I am working with a situation where I have, say, 2 drugs and gender, and my system is a patient, in that case, that will be called an ANOVA setup. I do not have any covariate. But if I have something like age, which is like a continuous thing, then I will not call it ANOVA. Now on the other extreme, I have the situation where I have got, okay, so before that, let me just introduce one more term. If I have got k factors, then I will call it a k-way ANOVA. If the number of factors is k, no covariate, then I will call it k-way ANOVA. So if there is only one input, and that is a categorical input, a factor input, that is one-way ANOVA. If there are 2 categorical inputs, 2 factors, then that will be called two-way ANOVA, and so on. Now if on the other hand I have the other extreme, I have only covariates, so I do not have any factor at all, just covariates, then I will call it a regression setup. Regression, the term regression is actually used in a far more general sense. Even outside the scope of linear model, we might have nonlinear regression as well. But in the world of linear models, the term regression is generally reserved for the situation where we have only covariates. Now what happens if we have both covariates and factors? In that case, we call it an ANCOVA model. ANCOVA, analysis, AN stands for analysis of covariance. Analysis of covariance. So that is, in a sense, the most general thing. And every software has some kind of arrangement for analyzing ANCOVA, and then they specialize, they just drop the factor part to do regression, and then they drop the covariate part to do ANOVA. So ANCOVA is the most general thing. What we are going to learn is basically ANCOVA, and the same technique may be used for ANOVA as well as regression, to be precise, linear regression. Here also the same terminology of way works. If the number of factors is k, in that case we call it k-way ANOVA, k-way ANCOVA. Observe that the number of covariates plays no role in this terminology. These are just some names. You will often see them used, and you will often see that when you are trying to use a software other than R does not use these sort of terms much, but if you are using something like SPSS, etc., then you sometimes need to know this terminology.